Greg Fann, the Preacher Man, and his sidekick Shanan Jones. Frank discussions of issues affecting the ATL, Fulton County, the state of Georgia, the nation, and around the world. And now, here they are, live and in living color, the team of Jones and Fann, the Preacher Man.
Well, welcome again to Straight Talk with yours truly, Greg Fann, the Preacher Man, and the young man,
Shanan Jones.
Shanan Jones. Hey, Shanan, how you doing today, man?
Man, I'm doing wonderful. If I was doing any better, I'd be sitting with Greg Fann.
Well, thank you so very, very much. You know you are sitting with Greg Fann. But listen, I want to just apologize to people who did not get a chance just last week. You know,
they cut us off.
They cut us off with some reason. They said that we were giving, with the information we were given about COVID, is that we cannot do that based on the fact that we did not have somebody who, for the medical field, was giving out data.
Right. I thought you're not a doctor.
No, I'm not.
But people call you doc.
Yeah, I know, but you know, I tell them I don't have a PhD. I don't have a MD. I don't have
man, you got us cut off.
I didn't even. The only thing I got a D was in school.
I'm gonna leave that alone. So they cut us off. It was that woman.
Yeah.
Wasn't us.
Yeah. Well, it was the basically.
Yeah.
You know, they said you need to be.
That makes sense. Because you got a lot of people, a lot of kooks out here.
Right.
Corner scientists.
Yeah. Then you do this, do that. Right.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that was the reason why.
It was a good show.
Good show. We're going to comply with their rules and regulations.
Yes.
We're going to leave that alone. And today we have a great show. We have a show. Basically, it's about the city of Atlanta. It's the crime on the killing, the murders, and things that's happening in Atlanta, but not only happening in Atlanta, but happening across the country. And we have the PBS News. We're going to be presenting their presentation today on their findings about crime in Atlanta and across the country. Because I think Atlanta just might go 103.
It's more than that now.
It's more than that now. And so, you know, one thing that Shanan and I, along with another group of ministers, and we invite other ministers to join us, we're going to be participating and going in communities where people are being murdered with what we call candles, lighting candles, or having what you call it?
Clergy with a candle.
Clergy with a candle.
Yeah.
It was an idea that Shanan, the Lord, laid upon your heart to do, and so we're going to be doing that and going into various communities, hopefully partner with other churches and pastors as we go into the community, talking about Jesus being the light of the world. That's the purpose of the candle. Jesus is the light of the world, and we have. Satan is in those dark places, and we're going in with the message of love. Jesus teaches us to love you one another as I have loved you, and love your neighbor as yourself. So we're going to be going in the community where people are, where these crimes are being perpetrated, people are killing people, and seeking out, as Jesus did, to seek out to save those which are lost. We're not the police. We're not trying to do the police job. They can't do our job, and we can't do their job. But we certainly can share the message of love and how we ought to be, as Jesus taught us to be, as Christians and as those who believe in the true teachings of Jesus Christ. So at this point, Shanan, you have anything you want to say before we move to it? I want to move to now our actual presentation, but before the presentation, we want to have Brother Hal Lamar with Black History Facts, and he's going to be talking about a real Atlantean, a native from Atlanta who became a great athlete, as Hal always do, talk about Atlanteans. Now, we'll be seeing you on the other side after Black History Facts. That was Black History Fact with Hal Lamar.
Basketball great Walter Frazier was born and raised in Atlanta and attended the former David T. Howard High School, who's famous for its list of graduates that included attorney Howard Moore, who successfully defended Angela Davis, Maynard Jackson, the city's first African-American mayor, attorney activist Vernon Jordan, Olympic gold medalist Mildred McDaniel Singleton, and federal judge Clarence Cooper. Frazier, who lettered in 3 sports at Howard, chose to follow the hoop and enrolled at Southern Illinois University, which incidentally was also the college home for comedian activist Dick Gregory. At SIU, Frazier was a standout, which came to the attention of the New York Knicks, which made him their first-round draft pick and 7th overall in 1967. He spent 10 years with the Knicks and 2 more with the Cleveland Cavaliers before retiring in 1979 to a second career as a broadcaster and color commentator. His jersey numbers at SIU and the Knicks were retired. He was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame in 1987 and in 2006 to the College Basketball Hall of Fame. This is Hal Lamar. Now back to Shanan Jones and Greg Fann, the Preacher Man.
In tune to Straight Talk with Brother Hal Lamar and Black History Fact. Join us each week for Black History Fact on Straight Talk. Well, I tell you, that interview with Walt Clyde Frazier was a good one.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
As they say in the South, ain't you some kin to him?
Yeah, I am some kin to him. He's a third cousin by way of my father's mother, my grandmother, and his granddad were brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And then my dad and his mom were first cousins.
Yeah.
And so he and my dad a second cousin.
Wow.
So he's like a third cousin. But I've been knowing him ever since I was knee high to a duck. Wait, look at me like that.
Speaking of knee high, what happened to you?
Everybody in our family is not tall because my dad
Apparently not.
My dad was the shortest one in the whole family.
They call that the run of the litter.
But he was the oldest. He was the oldest. Yeah, but that's my dad's sister. I mean, my dad's first cousin.
Yeah.
Son.
But you can play basketball.
Not a lick. They used to call me Hack'em Shack'em. I just asked.
Self-check. Nobody. You check yourself.
No. Anybody be trying to shoot the ball, I'd hack them. Nah, foul. You ain't finna take it in on me like that. No, that talent I did not have. His brother Keith played pretty good ball. He played at Douglas High School.
Okay.
High School. All right, so we're going to now move on to our next segment, which is the PBS story on crime in Atlanta and crime across the nation. It's not just an Atlanta problem.
No.
It is a nationwide problem.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah. So we're going to listen to them, and then we'll be back because we're going to be talking about the mayoral candidates who will be giving their position on crime in Atlanta and what they would do if elected mayor. We'll be back on the other side with that.
Even as some types of crime fell last year, murders and other violent crimes rose sharply in cities across the country, a trend that has continued this year. The causes are not well understood, and there are strong disagreements about how to address the problem. As Amna Nawaz reports, this debate over how to tackle violence is playing out in Atlanta.
She was shot 7 times in her back, and then they flipped her over and they shot her 1 time in her head.
In the early hours of May 17th at this Northwest Atlanta apartment complex, 27-year-old Alicia Merrill was shot and killed.
Would have been right in this spot where the sand is, right over here.
Her aunt, Vanessa Cox Logan, said she'd been throwing out trash at this dumpster while helping a friend to move.
It's the worst feeling of my life, and I could never get that back.
Alicia's mom, Sonia Merrill, remembers the phone call with the news that her daughter had been killed.
I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe it. One of my child is gone. She was the first of 6 of my kids, and she grew me up. She taught me how to be a mom.
Alicia was one of 6 people shot and killed in Atlanta that weekend alone.
Crime across the metro is on the top of minds. Crime in Atlanta.
Another violent weekend in Atlanta.
Part of a spike in violent crimes the city's seen since 2019, with aggravated assaults up 20% and murders up 52%.
From a year-to-year perspective, it was a historic surge in violence last year.
Princeton professor Patrick Sharkey, who tracks violent crime in American cities, says Atlanta is not alone. In St. Louis last year, murders increased by 35%, by 18% in San Jose, in Austin, 42%, Detroit, 19%, and New York City saw an increase of 45%.
So you had the pandemic and all the suffering and the abandonment of communities that went into that. Then you had this proliferation of guns. It creates the potential for more altercations to become lethal, for more fights to become shootings.
Historically, crime in American cities rose sharply between the 1960s and the 1980s, then fell from the 90s through 2014 when numbers again began to climb. The 2020 surge, Sharkey says, was notable. And calls for racial justice and police reform, he believes, also played a role.
Police may decide not to get involved in an incident where they have some discretion of whether to respond or not. Residents may also decide to check out and no longer call the police.
In Atlanta, the June 2020 police shooting of Rayshard Brooks, a black man confronted while he slept in a parking lot, sparked weeks of protest. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms criticized the use of deadly force. The police chief resigned. And after 2 officers were charged following Brooks' death, more than 150 other officers called out sick. Dozens have since resigned. Today, Atlanta's police department is hundreds of officers short.
I don't really think the police is the answer.
Columbus Ward has lived in the South Atlanta neighborhood of Peoplestown his whole life. This majority black neighborhood has seen some of the city's worst violence.
The Rayshard Brooks got killed right in our neighborhood by police, so that who do you trust? You know, how many people want to trust the police?
It's like a war zone.
Ethel Floyd has lived here for 57 years.
It's a well-known fact about the police. They only come after the fact. Bringing in more police officers is not going to help. It's only going to add fuel to the fire.
Resident after resident here tell us they're wary of an increased police presence, but some of their neighbors in North Atlanta disagree.
This northern suburb, known as Buckhead, was annexed by Atlanta in the 1950s. And here, too, they've seen an increase in crime recently, which is why some residents in this wealthy and mostly white neighborhood now say the solution is to break away.
We feel we're living in a war zone in Buckhead.
Bill White is leading the effort to create a separate city of Buckhead, allowing them to use their own tax base to fund their own budget. White says their city would lobby to tighten bail and sentencing rules and deploy its own independent police force.
A massive police presence will be something that the new Buckhead City Police Department will absolutely provide.
Buckhead's departure would take away significant resources from Atlanta. By some estimates, this area comprises 40% of Atlanta's property wealth, a large part of its tax base. Critics say that would hurt the city's ability to stem rising crime and inequality.
And I think what Buckhead City will do will most certainly push the criminals away from Buckhead, and everybody in Buckhead loves that idea.
How does taking those resources away help the rest of the city?
Well, Atlanta has done this to themselves. We're not taking anything away from them. They've done this to themselves.
It doesn't really kind of resonate with you until you go through something yourself.
Buckhead resident Ileana Kovic backs the effort to break away after she and her boyfriend, Jason Eads, were brutally assaulted in a parking lot last June.
The sheer terror of having someone put a knife in your face and tell you profanity and say to get on your knees and beg for your life, punch you until you're unconscious. I didn't ask for that.
What do you think it would take for you to feel safe right now?
Definitely more of a police presence.
More police on the streets, Sharkey says, would reduce crime in the short term, but without addressing underlying issues, wouldn't stop cycles of crime over the long term. It also carries additional costs, he says, in the form of police violence, mass incarceration, and intensive surveillance, disproportionately impacting communities of color.
We should be pushing police to do their job differently, to build trust and legitimacy, but we should also be investing in a different set of community institutions and organizations and ask them to play a larger role in contributing to safe, stronger neighborhoods.
You don't see this as an either or. This is a both and.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've never made a different commitment focused on investing in communities as the response to violence and all of the challenges that come with extreme inequality.
Our goal is to not do, but to work with.
But in Peoplestown, they've made that investment in recent years and are starting to see a return.
We have seen a decrease in violence through community collaboration, partnerships, and referrals, and not increased policing.
Aaron Johnson is a trauma responder for local nonprofit Chris 180. Since 2018, his program has partnered with others to step up early intervention here, including wellness programs like this, all with the goal of stopping violence before it happens. Efforts like yoga and mindfulness to help cope with trauma, training younger residents how to de-escalate conflicts, even food and mask distribution during the pandemic. While crime spiked across Atlanta last year, this area has seen a 50% decrease.
And I believe that violence stems from the lack of equitable resources, the ability to attain these resources, whether it be financial resources, whether it be educational resources. So when the Trauma Response Network comes in and other agencies come into communities to combat said violence, it's about bringing resources to communities.
More than 2 months later, Alicia Merrill's murder remains unsolved. No arrests have been made. And while Vanessa Cox Logan isn't opposed to more police help, her family and her community, she says, need more than that.
What do you think it would take to make you feel safe right now?
We need these cameras to be working. We need adequate wraparound services. I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take, it really will take the entire village.
Outgoing Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms recently announced plans to hire 250 additional police officers, as well as expand investment in community groups. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Amna Nawaz in Atlanta.
All right, Shannon. This whole thing with Atlanta and crime and this national crime problem, not just Atlanta. What say ye?
Well, first of all, as we know, it's happening all over the nation. It's the bad benefit of COVID, and we don't know, what is causing this. And it's interesting because it's not an easy fix. We're in the political season right now, and we're going to hear all kinds of different, we're already hearing it, we need to put, more police on the street, hundreds more officers on the street. We take officers off desk duty, put them on the street. That's one area. But then also we need to talk about workforce development and talk about industry coming back in and getting folks to work. Grandmama used to say that an idle mind is the devil's workshop. And so that's what we're facing here. We need all hands on deck. We need clergy, to come outside of the four walls and go to that space where church and society meet and make sanctuary together. We need to get our educators and we need a united front of people that are dealing with this epidemic of violence that's happening in our city. And we need to pray like never before.
All right, well, we're bringing up on this next segment the mayoral candidates.
Yeah.
Those individuals that vying for power, vying for position. That's the power.
Freudian slip.
Yeah, well, it's Freudian slip. Vying for to be the mayor of Atlanta. Now there were 12 that are qualified.
Mm-hmm.
That were actually 21
at one point,
and nine of them were disqualified, right? And so then the president mayor is not running for re-election, so you have 12 people that's running for the position. But prior to the Atlanta NACP hosted a forum with all 12 of them most recently, but prior to that, the Upper West Side CID, they hold a forum with the 5 mayoral candidates that they believed at that time would qualify. And so we're going to show that forum and hear what those individuals who said they were going to do as to what they were going to do about crime if they elected and become the next mayor of the city of Atlanta. So we're going to listen to them and see what they're talking about and what they say. Then we'll come back and I want to hear your opinion on what they say. How about that? And I want to hear your opinion on what you say.
Absolutely.
Crime is up in Atlanta. Have you heard? Did you know that? The AJC reported in June that homicides were up 58% since the same time in 2020. Mr. Reed, what do you see as the cause of that uptick in violent crime, and how would you address it as mayor?
My sense is one of the causes were people using the city as a playground during the COVID crisis, and then that behavior leaking into our community. In terms of resolving it, I believe that we need to hire 500 to 750 additional officers. I believe that we should transfer the human resources function for hiring officers out of City Hall and into APD so that they can hire officers faster. I think that they should partner with the Atlanta Police Foundation, and they should hire a recruiting firm to get our officer staffing up as well. I think that in addition to those steps, we need to move officers who are on desk out into the street until we push back against the surge of crime and violence. I think that we should use the city's $200 million in reserves, which my administration left, and run overtime to push back against hotspots in the city of Atlanta. Those are just some of the things that we need to do to turn the tide of crime and violence. We also need to surge resources of compassion. We need to reopen and establish every recreation center in the city of Atlanta. There are 33 of them. They should operate 7 days a week until 7 p.m. at night. And then we need to surge resources to all youth-oriented programs that our city offers today.
Thank you. Ms. Gay, what are your thoughts about APD? Are reforms to APD the centerpiece of your approach to crime?
It's an essential component. We've got to be able to do several things at once. We obviously have an acute problem right now of an increase in violent crime, particularly homicide. And there are some things we need to do immediately to arrest that problem. But at the same time, we've got to have smart strategies for safer policing. And the world has changed. The nature of what we're facing has changed. You can't just do what we might have done 4 or 8 years ago. New problems require new strategies, and smart solutions. But at the same time, we've got to have good policing. And we've got to be clear with our police department what we expect of them, not ask them to do things that social services and mental health services are better equipped to do, give them the resources and the training that we need for them to do those jobs, but also be very clear about what we hold them accountable for. There are resources, there are partners, there are protectors, but we've also got to make sure that we are clear about the type of policing we want in this city, and we measure that, we reward that, and for people who can't perform in that way, they would have to do something else.
Thank you. You know, we've heard from some time that APD, the morale there is pretty bad. It's down. Ms. Moore, how will you boost morale among the APD officers and fill the 400 open authorized police officer positions?
Well, first of all, to boost the morale, they have to have leadership that they trust and they respect. And I have a good relationship with many of the officers over the many years that I serve, and I talk to many of them quite frequently, and morale is the #1 issue. I'm going to attend every roll call within the first 100 days of my office and make sure that every officer that patrols our streets has a face-to-face with the mayor. I'm going to open the line of communication with my office because I talk to some officers, but there are many others that I don't talk to. There is a culture change that needs to happen within the department, and I want to know those issues so that I can work and address them, as well as how and what leadership that we have to do that department. I also want to get those officers that are sworn with badges and guns out from behind the desk and on the street. I want them to spend immediately, because we're in a crisis situation, a portion of their work hours on the street, relieving our patrol officers so that they can patrol and do things that they need to do. And I also want to relieve our officers of having to be social workers and crisis interveners and get a 24-hour group that can respond 24 hours a day to those type of issues. So those are some of the things I think will help with the morale, because it will relieve the pressure, but also let them know that their leadership supports them.
Thank you. Mr. Brown and Mr. Dickens, you're in the hot seat together. Both of you voted to withhold $73 million from APD in June of 2020. Do you support defunding the police? Mr. Dickens, I'll begin with you.
No, Ms. Ram, I do not support defunding the police. And actually, the Atlanta City Council never took a vote to defund the police. I never voted for it, and we never actually had a resolution or ordinance to defund the police. What we did do in the wake of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and other just untimely deaths that were by police excessive use of force was we said, let's look at all of the training. Let's look at all of the procedures and the policies of our police force. Let's make sure that we sit down with the chief of police, the COO, and re-look at how we do policing in the city of Atlanta. We want to be ahead of the game to do community policing, to do community-based policing where we have officers that can live in the city and officers that are also walking the beat, to be able to learn how to de-escalate situations, to work in a way that has conflict resolution. So no, not at all. I do not support defunding the police.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, do you support defunding the police?
I do not support defunding the police. I've never supported it, and I'm not going to waste time speaking to that issue. I support reimagining public safety. Here is the sad reality of what is transpiring in the city of Atlanta. You have individuals living in generational poverty that are struggling to survive every day, having to choose between committing a crime to ensure that their family can put food on their table and stay in their home, or becoming unsheltered in the city of Atlanta. So the reality is that if we're going to address crime in this city, it's not going to be based on how many officers we put on the streets of Atlanta. It's going to be based on us addressing the root cause of generational poverty that is leading to the crime that we see in this city. I instituted as a council member the first community policing unit on MLK and Lowry in one of the most high-ridden crime areas of Atlanta. We were able to, through the leadership of Chief Shields, to reduce crime by 57% in 4 months. We discontinued the program because it wasn't mandated and budgeted within the city of Atlanta. We will mandate and budget it. Community policing in this city. Officers will get out of their cars and work with the residents to rebuild trust, so we can bring community together and we can all thrive and prosper. There is no reason why anyone should have to die in this city at the hands of law enforcement. None. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question addresses the Atlanta Detention Center, and this question will be asked of all the candidates. Mayor Bottoms announced her intentions to close the Atlanta City Detention Center 2 years ago. She has not received the support of council to turn 500,000 square foot facility in the heart of downtown into a hub for residents to receive support services. The question for the candidates is, will you continue in her footsteps to close the jail? Why or why not? Ms. Gay, will begin with you.
I would not. I would not proceed. I would proceed differently. We have a humane housing crisis at the Fulton County Jail. Fulton County Jail has been overcrowded for years. It has been under court order to improve the conditions. I'm very mindful of all the things that are being done at the state level and the federal level to reduce the number of people we incarcerate and to reduce the sentences of the people who are incarcerated. But the fact is there are people who are in the Fulton County Jail and who are required to be in the Fulton County Jail, and it is our obligation as a community to house those people humanely. The Atlanta jail is almost empty. Right now, that crisis can be averted by partnering with our partner, Fulton County, to house people in that jail. As people are arrested, we need to be very clear about figuring out people who don't need to be in jail, who need addiction treatment or mental health treatment, make sure they're diverted to the programs that would help them. But we also need to be realistic about partnering with the county to make sure that our criminal justice system as a whole works well. The other problem is if you close the city jail, you don't have any place to process the people who are arrested for violating city ordinances, which could make policing some of these hot spots and addressing some of our city issues actually harder. So I would follow the recommendations of Sheriff Labatt.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, will you close the jail? Why or why not?
Well, if you're looking for something that's going to differentiate you with candidates, I do support closing the jail. I support the fact that we should be able, even through closing the jail, find a place of compromise with Fulton County, with some of our neighboring partners, to be able to create a center for equity and wellness. I truly believe that. Why? Because my mom was incarcerated when I was 12 years old. And she came out of the criminal justice system, and what happened? There were no resources and opportunities for her. So she committed recidivism. She found herself in a cycle of recidivism where she was continuously in and out of prison. We can use ACDC to be a place where folks from Fulton County that have committed low-level offenses can be matriculated through ACDC and be able to readapt back into society. There's ways to house the unsheltered population within ACDC. We need beds right now. The barriers for entry with private beds in the city of Atlanta are so high. The rise in the unsheltered population continues to grow because there's nowhere for them to go because they can't get into the shelters in the city of Atlanta. Why can't we use ACDC in an equitable way while still supporting Fulton County and being able to take care of the city of Atlanta? So I hope you all support me in the fact that we definitely need to reimagine ACDC and not continue to waste taxpayer dollars when there's low-level entry into the facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reed, would you continue in Mayor Bottom's footsteps? Why or why not in closing the jail?
I will keep the jail open. It should not be closed, and we should not have announced that it was closing in the middle of a global pandemic and a surge in crime. Atlanta has about 500 to 600 repeat offenders. These aren't people who made mistakes or tripped up. These are people who have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 felony convictions. Those individuals have made a decision to live a life of crime. We need the capability when they commit crime to remove them from our community and try to find them help. I also think that we should be partnering with Sheriff Pat Labatt and cooperating to give additional bed space to the Fulton County Sheriff's Office. Another point I would make is this. When you lead a global city that has a reputation for leading in civil and human rights, an event in Minneapolis or in Dallas, Texas, or Baton Rouge can create a situation where you have 10,000 people who are protesting in your downtown. Some of those individuals, a very small number, do not have good intentions. You need a jail facility to manage, and you need to have that kind of capability. I also think that it sends a terrible message to criminals that the Fulton County Jail is absolutely full and that the city's jail is closed. It makes them believe that they can get away with anything.
Thank you. Ms. Moore, would you continue in Mayor Bottom's footsteps to close the jail? Why or why not?
I would not continue in her footsteps, and the reason why, and there are many, but the first and foremost is I would not like to see those who are protesting in our streets have to have a state charge and go to Fulton County Jail because we don't have a city jail that we can hold them on municipal offenses and keep their records clean. But the real reason wise because there's a tale of two jails. I visited both of them. You go to the Fulton County Jail, it's cramped, it's outdated, it's functionally obsolete. You have people sleeping on the floor. It brought me to tears to see the cells that those that are mentally ill are being held in. That is not where they should be. And then you go to our city jail and the kitchen, all of the facilities work. It's wide open, it's spacious, there are clean showers, there are toilets, there are spaces where they can have and live and breathe, and particularly in a COVID environment. We have to do this humanely. People should not be kept in that condition. And the sooner that we can work with our Fulton County partners to open up the facility so people can be treated humanely before they have an opportunity to go to court and you have to live in inhumane conditions, that is not the city that we are. And so no, I would not close the city jail, and I will work with Fulton County.
Mr. Dickens, would you close the jail? Why or why not?
No, I would not close the city jail. Right now, we are in a crime wave, and it is a crime wave that we have to use all the tools at our disposal right now. As stated, Fulton County Jail is overcrowded, and Sheriff Labat has asked us to allow him 500 beds in our ACDC city facility. We should allow that because this is a human rights crisis, actually. When people are stacked on top of each other, sleeping in hallways, we need to be able to use our ACDC as a relief valve for that purposes. We are in the middle of a crime spike, so we need to use these tools. And me as mayor, I'll make sure that this is just a crime spike and not the new normal. And that is what people are concerned about. And we have to look at this as a whole criminal justice system. Because if you're sitting in jail, that means you have not been adjudicated. You have not been before a judge. You haven't been before a judge, and you have not gone on to prison or be set free. So this problem is being able to have relationships and intentionality about how we get all the people throughout the process on the same page for us to be able to deal with these problems. So I have a plan, and you can visit that at safestreetsatlanta.com. My S is for surge, to make sure that we hire more officers right now. The A is to be able to arrest these gang leaders that are preying on our children and on our communities. The F is to set up a strike force to be able to get these illegal guns out of the streets. And the E is to basically empower community-based policing.
Well, Shannon, I tell you, man, that forum was something else. Ms. Ram did a great job keeping everybody intact, and thank you,
that's
Ms.
not
Ram.
easy.
Thank you, Ms. Ram. Good job.
Yeah,
she did a great job, and one or two of them tried to get out. Well, a little longer than they should. But anyway, what is your paralysis of this analysis of this paralysis?
I think that we heard some
of
good
this
stuff.
forum.
Yeah, I think we heard some good stuff centered around with the forum around crime. Mm-hmm. I think it's a both and approach. A lot of what we heard, good information there. They need to keep working that platform a little more. We need systemic racism was an interesting piece, putting more officers on the street, not closing down. The municipal jail was something that, is critical. I mean, Felicia Moore really that was interesting to hear the dynamics of that from a municipal situation to a state situation. So I thought that much of what we heard was good, but it's going to take a whole lot more than that. But I think that several of them are on the right track. But we didn't hear the fix yet. And what I didn't hear particularly was talking about connecting with clergy and connecting with other community leaders and building a partnership. You don't have to have all the answers. Sometimes you need to say, I'm going to listen to and build consensus. That's what I think Shirley Franklin did well with the clergy roundtable that she had. Mm-hmm. It was many of us, almost 100 of us in the room once a month meeting and talking about everything from potholes to crime. And she listened more than she talked. And so we need a mayor that has ideas and a plan, that's willing to be ready day one, but also that's ready to listen on day one.
Well, that was the 5 of them. It's 12 that are qualified.
Yeah.
And the NACP just had a forum with the 12 who have qualified. There were actually 21 people trying to run for mayor, man, for the city of Atlanta. Boy, I tell you, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
9 of them were disqualified, but there were 12 of them that were
disqualified for different reasons.
Yeah, for different reasons.
Some of them couldn't come up with the $5 check.
Yeah, I know that's right. And some of them were not legal residents, hadn't been living in Atlanta long enough. There's a gamut of reasons why they were disqualified. However, Shanan, with crime in Atlanta, we talked about that, and of course, God gave you a vision to deal with the night of candles, the light of candles, and we're going to be dealing with that, and we're inviting other ministers to come in the room. Let's talk about that a little bit. Come on in the room. Come on in the room.
Come on in the room. Yeah, we back in June, we began having a conversation about something the Lord laid on my heart, which was to bring together clergy and the church at large from the varying different factions of the body, to pray for the city and the metro area and the state at large. It was going to be called, and it still will be, COVID has slowed it down, but it will be called a night of light, where we come together. And the committee that is pulling this together, so you've got progressives, you've got conservatives, you've got blacks, whites, Asians, all of us coming together. We're called Clergy with a Candle. And the mission is to light the darkness with the light of love. And so we've already come together. We've had some interesting discussions. And, you know, we don't all have to, we won't all agree, but we're finding the centrality of Christ and connecting to that centrality and allowing that to be the unifying factor that keeps us on mission to light this. So we invite clergy from all throughout the metro area and the state. And if you're watching anywhere in the country or anywhere you are, we want you to join, and your clergy, we want you to join this committee and start a committee there in your locale. Start it. Clergy with a Candle. Let's light the darkness with the light of love.
You know, Jesus is the light of the world, and Jesus talked about that. And him being the light of the world, he came into the world to bring light in the dark places. And that message he left with us was to love you one another as I have loved you, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And if we move back as men and women of God and of faith and believe in Jesus Christ, is that this is our role, not the police role. They cannot do what we can do. God gave us this charge, this calling. So we're asking you as pastors, as ministers, as people of faith, let's walk together, church, and not get weary. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land, and if we are going to make it to the promised land, we have to make it by living out what Jesus said to us. Whatever you do unto the least of them, you do also unto me. And if you don't, you're going to hell. And if we don't love you one another just as he has loved us, then we know what we're destined to. Not this fleshly body, but the soul that God has given us that's housed in this body. It is our soul that God is coming back for. And he is coming back sooner than we think. Hey, I'm Greg Fann, the preacher man. I'm here with my good friend and my young man, Shanan Jones. How you doing?
You dropped my E. You didn't.
Yeah, I forgot I dropped your E. Shanan E. Jones.
That's right.
Until next week, listen, check us out right here on Straight Talk each and every week. Share it with your Facebook friends and family, your YouTube family. Won't you do that? It's Straight Talk. And subscribe to our channel. We'll see you right here, same time, same place, with Straight Talk. Because this ain't nothing but what, Shanan?
Straight Talk.
Want to be a guest on Straight Talk? Email Greg Fann at FANN922@Comcast.net or call 404-308-0795. Join us again for another episode of Straight Talk with Shanan Jones and Greg Fann, the Preacher Man.